not on a field survey, but based on Washington County GIS information.
What does that tell you?
That leads, a surveyor has not been out there to authenticate property corners and
So
determine that.
how could the township possibly, I'm looking at it because I don't see anything that I normally see in an easement. How could the township actually record an easement that's not appropriate?
Yeah, paragraph 3 of the easement reads, Union Township and property owner reserve the right to terminate this easement agreement at any time hereinafter and should notify the other party in writing.
I understand.
I've never seen that in a single easement
I
document.
understand it, because I'm worried about the drawing.
Right.
How in the world could I record a drawing that doesn't have the appropriate meets and bounds or whatever else? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, I would like to see more accuracy.
Because I can tell you, again, they always say, wisdom is your experience. Experience is the mistakes you've either made or seen people make mistakes. I've had this situation in the past, where basically you have a drawing and it's not accurate, and then basically you get sued because you have a taking of the property.
Yeah, we would be proceeding with, some assumptions made as to the fact that those property lines are in fact accurate.
Larry,
which is-
Judge Gilmore told me the word assume. When I was a young attorney, he said, what does assume mean? What does assume mean?
Now it's not a you with me.
I said the word assume, and that's what he told me. Gilmore, I was his first law firm. So I would suggest basically to do something, you have to do it the right way.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. So, if the board would like, we're already doing a deduct change order with plat checks to remove the batting cages from the scope of work. We talked about that at past meetings. We can include the addition of the fences and some trees as a line item on that paperwork, have the contractor do that work, and then approach our neighbor with a permanent document.
And with the appropriate drawing.
With the appropriate drawing. So, let me know on that. Any other comments regarding Veterans Park?
No, just that it is imperative that we get that fence up, especially if it's running out tonight.
The temporary fence.
This weekend.
So you're saying the plat checks, you put that up?
No, I meant the permanent fences that are gonna isolate Mr. Schaff's left field
The
area.
temporary fence you're talking would be just like down where that handicap, down that one side from that going into the ball field now, right?
Yeah, I'm envisioning the temporary fence to run sort of along the parking area and,
Right.
What I saw
shield
them-
off the disturbed area.
What I saw them do last year is condense all their equipment into one area and fence it off. I don't know how scattered it is right now up there and all, but that's what I saw them do last.
I have pictures.
Do you?
Yes.
Yeah, you have,
See them.
there's a skid loader in the infield, there's a hydrant located just outside the entrance to the field. But he has equipment scattered everywhere from where the trash bin is all the way out to
So I saw
virtually the
them
outfield.
condense it all in a matter of a day and then fence it off, but,
He could do it in a day.
yeah. I know that kids would be attracted to this.
Yeah, they're gonna wanna-
Stuff, I mean, they're just gonna go right to it like it's a piece of fiber on it. Last year, he even had a fuel tank sitting in the road, and he still managed to get it all fenced off.
Saw water, I didn't see fuel.
But last year, he had a fuel tank.
Michelle, do we wanna do that, or do you want me to call him tomorrow morning first thing and tell him he needs to fence it off?
Tomorrow's Friday, we're credit out on Saturday.
Okay.
I would try to minimize your liability so we can get hurt at the facility.
So we do it
I
ourselves?
mean, well, maybe reach out to him to condense it, so it's easier for us to do it. Less fencing.
Yeah, that's fine. I can call him first thing tomorrow and tell him
Maybe he
needs to
has,
fence it off.
maybe he has some temporary fencing that, maybe with some teamwork, and you got the fencing, you got the.
I'm sure he has, I'm sure he has that construction fences.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that it was being rented Saturday. I would've told him today.
It is rented for the next 5 weekends.
But the thing about it is, we can't, I wouldn't suggest wait to hear from him. I would think it'd be more prudent for the township to put it up themselves, because he may just say, I'm too busy or maybe back.
But he may say it's in that trailer down there, that I put it up, but it's got, I mean, it may be sitting on the, at the park, I don't know what that is. I didn't realize it was that bad down there.
are we putting up the fence there tomorrow then? Or is the road crew working tomorrow? Or do you work 4/10, do you work 5/8?
40 hours a week.
I'm just saying, someplace they work 4/10 now.
They are all here.
Oh, good. And the two of them was today, probably were mowing along the roads.
What are you folks gonna do? Do you wanna have a fence put up, Larry?
Absolutely, and truthfully, I'm getting tired of talking and listening about it. The Veterans Memorial Park, the amount of money, I know what I'm going to say is repetitive, has been spent out there. And look at the end product. There's always evidently been difficulty with the contractor, getting him out there to do things he was contracted to do. And there was an estimation given, I believe in a meeting or two ago, for another $150,000 having to be spent out there to complete that part as based on the contract, executed, 3 years ago now? 4 years ago? And grass, how many times have we talked about grass? Being unsuccessfully planted. How many inches of topsoil to be placed out there? Evidently, at one point, some of the topsoil was put in place, and no grass ever grew. I mean, it's just like one big circus. And they keep coming back to the appointees on the board, plus Mr. Dupree, who was elected, serving out the remainder of her term, to rectify the problem.
So, let's fence up then, Larry, tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, and I think we need to go a further step.
Tomorrow, if that contractor, you said he'll be there tomorrow?
That's what he told me on the phone this afternoon, yeah.
Well,
He has a crew there tomorrow.
see if he's there tomorrow, I'd tell him put the fence up while he's there. I say, you know, since he's already gonna be there, if not, then we would have to get the road crew guys to do it.
I think,
Party day.
I'm thinking what you wanna do is you wanna be prepared. You gotta, don't let the ball, we play the ball, let the ball play, so he's there, that's great. But if you say, what time does your road crew start?
7?
So if, I'm assuming this guy starts at 7, I don't know, but I would assume by noon time, if nothing's being done, I would start putting a fence up. Does that make sense?
Dennis, I think we also have to go one step further. We waited 2.5 years for this park. We have to give them this is a hard and fast, you have to have it completed by such and such date, which I would put a maximum of 2 weeks from today.
But,
And then if it isn't done, we need to get another contractor. Get his equipment out of there.
do we have, in the contract, it has what's called liquidated damage clause? What is it, 800, 300, 500?
I can check, I think it's 500
500 a day, I think it was.
per day. There's a clause in there.
There's also.
I didn't
law-
write it, so
there's
I
al-
don't know what it
I don't know,
means.
it says that there's also a lot of law dealing with liquidated damage clauses also. which you have to get rid of.
Oh, I know, yeah.
All right, give me a copy of the contract. I understand the questions right now, I think the question on the fence, what
I
do you
think it's
say?
the first couple pages of that binder.
I'm absolutely, you know, safety is number one. My question is, does the crew have the ability to go and purchase this?
Well, they would have to go, if we don't have any fence, they'd have to go purchase it and put it up.
Where would you purchase it at? I don't know, I've never
I
bought
don't know what to find out, where's those do that?
Tractor supply.
Tractor supply, auction supply.
Do we have accounts with any of them that are open?
That's the other thing.
Now, if he has some of those pipes, he had some of those poles up down at one side there, it's there, we just tied the
Yeah.
existing poles
Fasten it to
they
the
have
side.
up.
Some zip ties maybe.
But there was some up
But we
last
still
time I was
need him to
there.
consolidate his equipment.
Right, we
That's-
do.
Yeah.
You want my charge?
I'll take it.
You want a credit card?
My
Taylor?
my father said anytime an idiot wants to part with their money, give it to you.
You want my credit card to Tractor Supply?
Dennis, if need be, I can handle it.
No, I don't want your credit card,
Or I can use my accounts at Home Depot or Lowe's or any of the other
Just say,
places. I have
you know,
plenty
say,
of
I'll give you-
accounts.
I do tractor supply.
No, I'm just saying, you wanna do, I don't get this question, I'm just saying, I need my credit card.
Okay.
I don't have to purchase it.
I thought they had one.
All right, so
Alright,
we
we
got.
good on that?
Yeah, okay, what it says.
Alright, next is MS4, quickly, we talked about MS4 last meeting, at length, as Michelle tells me, so I'm gonna make it brief for this time. Our office is moving ahead with the, updated mapping for the MS4s, all the outfalls, all the inlets, all the storm sewers, everything that DEP requires, so I think by the next meeting on the 20th, we'll have drafts to display, get those out in the public, and have them ready to go, and by the end of the month, by the time we, have to submit our annual report. We've made a lot of progress with our field work during this dry weather spell. We've completed all the outfall inspections. We counted 89 in total that, are part of the MS4 permit. So, we're 100% done with the outfall inspections, which is good. We have a couple more ponds that we have to look at. The Tuscany Estates pond being one, and there's a few others, so, we'll wrap those up by the end of the month. We finished up our updates to the township's written components of their stormwater plan. There's a public education and outreach program, a public involvement and participation program, and an illicit discharge detection and elimination program. So a few years back, Harshman prepared those for the township. They're supposed to be updated and reviewed each year, so we reviewed those and made the necessary improvements and updates for this year's annual report. So, and then the last thing I have for the MS4 update, as always, we are looking for input from the public regarding the Union Township Stormwater Program. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have concerns regarding stormwater in the township, we ask that you would present those to the board or to myself. We're gonna give an opportunity at these public meetings for public involvement and participation. If you have questions after the meeting and you wanna, call our office or send me an email, please do. We document all of those things, we answer questions, we want the public to be involved with what the township's doing from a stormwater standpoint going forward. So, if you see something that looks suspicious, from an illicit discharge standpoint, I know Joe and I have been talking about a potential case, up there with PA American. If it's not stormwater and it's making its way to an inlet or a catch basin, that's potentially an illicit discharge. So we're asking that if you see something, bring it to our attention, say something, and, the township will then fulfill its obligation to inspect that and follow up and report on it as part of their permit every year. So, we're making good progress. We got a few more things we gotta wrap up, but we're well on our way, I think, to getting the township back into proper standing with respect to their MS4 permit. So this is open to the group. Does anybody have any questions regarding MS4 or stormwater in Union Township?
What we do in some townships, we basically have a separate section on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I think I
We
forgot.
talked about that
I
last week
forgot to
too.
do that, but.
We'll do it on the 20th and we'll get it
That we
documented.
have public comment, so that we comply.
correct, yeah. So, we want people to be involved. Yeah, I think that's all I have on MS4. Any questions?
The Tuscany Estates Stormwater Retention Fund is part of the MS4.
It is, yeah, it's part of the township's stormwater, they call it best management practice, so it's the, whether that's a stormwater pond or underground detention system, any type of infrastructure that's meant to manage stormwater is considered a best management practice. MS4 is chock full of so many acronyms it makes your head spin. Yes, to answer your question, Tuscany Estates is on the township's inventory for stormwater ponds that they inspect every year.
Because it has never been completed. It is currently sitting up there in the,
E&S state.
yes,
Yeah.
it's never been converted to a permanent structure.
Do you know if is their NPDS permit still active for that? Or has that been, so
That's a good question, because I've talked to Washington County Conservation District, and they tell me that DEP and Rwanda and Gateway are currently working on a new erosion control plan for that,
Okay.
which will be part of that, but that's just me talking to the DEP and the Conservation District myself. I don't really know.
Okay, anybody else on MS4? We good for now? Next up is the Findaville-Rama Road Sewage Project. I talked very briefly with Eric Fritz of Lennon Smith last week about possible options that they're looking at for that project. They're looking at adding a few more houses on Gilmore Drive. Apparently there's 4 or 5 houses, I think it's 5, John, right? That could potentially be connected to the project via a gravity sewer on Gilmore Road that would then cross over Findaville-Rama Road to the other side of the road where the wet well would be. So, Lennon Smith has developed a estimated cost of $311,000 to tie those additional 5 houses in to the project. So that's, you know, there's a considerable price tag associated with that. So when you break it right down, there were 19 houses projected to be tied into the original scope of work back when we originally were talking about grinder pumps and a low pressure system. And the total cost was, I think, $1.2 million in the MOU. Anyways, the average cost per lot is about $60,000 for the original 19. And if you take 5 houses at $300,000 total, you know, essentially they're looking at adding 5 more houses at the same cost per lot that it would be for the general rest of the project. So Lennon Smith asked that I bring this up at tonight's meeting with the board, just so that the board is aware of the alternatives that they're looking at. As you guys are well aware, when you put together an Act 537 plan, you're tasked with evaluating every technically feasible alternative. So they have identified these 5 houses as being potentially technically feasible to be connected to this project and included as part of the sewer, sewer service area and the sewer project. So it's my understanding that we're going to discuss all of those alternatives in a lot more detail when we schedule that eventual joint meeting with the River Street Board and our board and their engineer to review the 537 plan and their final design. So Eric tells me that'll probably be July or August, as they need a little bit more time to develop their design and put together their draft. So that's where that stands with that project. Eric also brought to my attention that there's, per the terms of the MOU, Dennis, there's a payment to Peters Creek Sanitary Authority, which is due within the first 90 days. So based on my calendar count, 90 days is June 15th. So there's a relatively hefty payment that, per the terms of that MOU, the township is to pay to the sanitary authority. So that should certainly be considered tonight. I think that time is going to lapse before the next meeting. So anyways, just wanted to bring that up.
Questions being asked, is that something to be motion? We need a payment that needs to be made.
We basically already agreed upon, but do we have to put it on the agenda to do a motion?
I don't recall we agreed to this before,
Yeah.
What's spelled out in the MOU, which was
signed.
signed by the
So all we have
township,
to do,
passed and signed.
since it's part of the MOU that's approved, all we'd have to do is just have someone between now and 15 cut a check, and I would put the check in the mail. I would hand deliver it because the mail is done.
Yeah, I think it was in the judge.
So so you can make the check, but again, I would have the check hand delivered. I would not put it in the mail.
Right. Okay, that's that project. Next up is Elrema Phase Park. Quick update, we did submit the Phase 2A grant application to Greenways Trails and Rec yesterday, so that application is in. for the balance of work associated with phase two. I have Herb and Sheila say the sewage issue on my engineer's report tonight. Last meeting, we talked about looking into what connection criteria would be required to get those folks tied into the public system. So that's on my list of things to do. I haven't gotten to it yet, but when I do look into that, we'll pass that information along to the Sagis and to the township.
I continued that, at the last minute, I continued for another 90 days after that hearing date.
Right.
Didn't I send you some information about possible assistance for them?
Yes.
Okay, that's what they can look at.
Yeah, and then once they have their scope figured out, then they would apply to, funding possibilities. And then the last issue, Joe brought it up during public comment, but I did meet with him on Tuesday this week to look at the Hobbit Lane, Aragon Place, Pennsylvania American tank draining situation. We talked about it briefly, but I think the first objective, the critical component of this is that when Pennsylvania American drains their tank, they should be telling the township about what they're doing, and there should be some type of understanding between the township and the water company before they do that. And two, when they do it currently, there's nowhere for that water to go. The drain that they tie into does not have a feasible outlet. It's completely plugged. Joe and I were not able to locate it in the field. So when they drain the last 2 feet of water out of the tank, that water has no place to go other than welling up through the ground and becoming a saturation issue on people's private property. So,
So this reservoir, is it for water?
it's a finished water storage tank, and they have to drain it down to do inspections, which I don't know how frequently they do that. Probably at most once a year. However, when they do that, probably 75 or 80% of the tank gets drained out into the distribution system. But there's a little bit of water at the bottom of the tank underneath the standpipe that can't drain down into the system. They have nothing to do with it other than pumping it out of the tank and into a township's catch basin.
Let me ask you a question. The stuff is at the bottom, that would be the sediment,
I mean, you'd hope not. In a finished water tank, you'd hope not.
Sometimes where I live.
Yeah, there's probably some, yeah.
Where I live in.
Any of your solids would have settled out, yeah, you're right.
Where I live on Camden Road, every so often I turn the water in the morning, I feel like I'm drinking Clorox,
Sure.
okay?
You're
Yes,
right.
I think that was, I recall correctly, some years back, part of the old Phillyville Water Works.
Okay.
It belonged to their system.
Their
Their
tanks.
system.
Their tanks.
Their tanks.
There's 2 up there.
Pardon me?
There's 2 tanks up
That's
there.
right.
So I think what we need to do is a couple things. First, we need to determine where the township's ownership of that drain pipe ends. Did the township take over the whole pipe? How much of that storm sewer system do they
What
have?
about asking the water companies, that they have pumps that they pump it up over and go to another?
Well, that's the other thing, is we need to open a
Right.
line of dialogue with the water
Oh,
company.
right, but I'm just saying, that maybe they would do that and pump it to the other, and it would go in the sewer system and be going down over, into the stormwater system. That's one alternative, would be to check to see.
Right. So Dennis is right, we need to do some due diligence, we need to figure out what's going on up there, but I think, it starts with a little bit of research on our part, and then we have to have some dialogue with the water company, and we have to get that pipe flowing again. If, water company aside, that catch basin's not functioning properly as it is, so when you get a precipitation event, it's making its way to that catch basin and then it doesn't drain.
Well,
So even during wet weather events, it's a problem, water company aside.
we had a problem with the developer that was being developed up there. There was a couple, for the catch basins that went over the hill, the pipes that were blocked, and we ran a camera down there and found out that the pipes were smashed whenever they were put in, and that's what the problem was, and that they had to be, replaced.
Could be a similar issue.
But if that's there, I don't know, like you said, but I know I think there was 2 instances where the pipe was smashed and they had to be replaced, because we had a camera run down there and found out they were smashed.
The pipe you keep saying is clogged, is it a township pipe or is it PWC pipe? Or we don't know.
Depends how much the township took over. The portion of it that's in the right of way, the township owns, presumably. It's a question of whether or not they own beyond the edge of the public right of way.
So between the reservoir and the township right of way, is that pipe on PWC property?
It's on town, it's in the township
They're
right
gonna
away.
get into our storm drain, but it going towards.
I just don't,
Then it's that drainage was part of you might wanna, if you're talking to PWAC, in their files, was provided, by the Dubs family, to Bobby Van Voorst, was one of the developers up there,
Okay,
to allow for that drainage on what was the Dubs property.
okay.
That may give you I don't know how PWAC would look at that. If they have that agreement in hand, it was passed on to them, to allow for that drainage from those tanks and the runoff. And then it ended up on the Dubs property. By agreement with Bobby Van Voorst.
I think we need to look at the drawings on that stuff, I mean, I just.
Yeah, Michelle
I
found some
don't-
drawings
I
here,
just can't,
so-
I can't.
We need to get up to speed with what's going on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned, did the builder possibly dedicate a right-of-way or easement way back in the day? You mentioned doing due diligence to look into that. If there was a dedicated right-of-way for this, it should have been recorded, right? Which means it would show up on my survey, which it does not show up. There's nothing on our survey. We have stacks of paper this high researching this property. We've been on this for 22 months. There was so much done up there that was not right. As far as selling lots when there was no road, those poor people, that's illegal. Can't do that. There were no utilities, there was no road. The whole homeowners association, that was never signed off on, that was never recorded. My guess is even if he had an agreement, I'd have spent my life on the fact that it's not recorded because we paid a lawyer a lot of money to do a lot of research. And if you can produce something, I'm gonna be floored.
So
Because
there's
it's
an
not.
HOA up there?
Yes, there's an HOA, but guess what? We're exempt because it was never recorded. And I got all in writing from my attorney. We're not part of it. We should have been, phase
So
3.
Do they, okay, but is there a functioning HOA up there?
Yes, for phase 1 and 2, yes, there is. And Larry Komarski, is the one in charge. He's the head of the homeowners association.
But you're not part of that?
No, because
he
it was
wrote-
never recorded, never
That's
signed.
you.
Yep,
Yeah,
never
he
signed,
wrote-
never
he wrote us a
recorded.
letter. He
We have
checked
all,
it out, yeah.
and we had them sign off on it because it was never recorded. So my guess is even if there was an easement, I'm gonna be shocked if that's the only thing that was recorded up there in phase 3. There was a lot of funny
What was-
business going on in the
what was that-
90s up there.
When was that done, by the way, nineties or what?
90s. I thought it was 93, 90, yeah, somewhere around there. So
I wasn't here back then, so.
yeah,
Me neither.
I wasn't here either. So, all I can say is, we just wanna make it right. We wanna start building. Now we're stalled even more as interest rates rise and rise. Like, this is gonna cost us a lot of money the more this drags. And I just can't imagine that it's legal to dump that water. I know that it's not, we all know that it's not.
See, the reason why I have questions, there's, I deal with a lot of water situations. That water sometimes is contaminated, and it's, cause I deal with a couple of water bills. Sometimes you have to be careful what's inside.
I understand, but regardless, I don't care what's in it, it shouldn't be coming onto the property. even
That's
if
what
it's
I'm,
the
no,
right
it
one.
is, it's from our, it should be, and I understand, but I'm concerned that they're dumping something that may not.
And they might be, that could very well be, like you said, the taste of chlorine in water, the smell, yeah, you're right, it could be, you're right, if there's sediment in that, then it becomes a true health hazard.
And certainly if you go above so much, let's see, CCLs or something, it becomes cancerous or whatever.
Yeah, I'm a 2-time cancer patient, so this is really an issue for us, building down there. Really, it should be for everyone sitting here, because it's not just our property, it's those people on Aragon. You sat on the man's porch who said his yard is flooded over and over and over again. That's not fair to him. He says he's reached out, but he's gotten no action. So we need to do something quickly, if you can.
We're doing due diligence, again, it just came up last week, but we're trying as much. We'll do a conference call with this guy, with
Okay.
PWC, and
Yeah,
well, again, I just need to take a look at the drawings, I really can't figure out what.
There's a video as well. You saw the video of
Yeah,
the gentleman
yeah.
who's been flooded. He has pictures of the water, video coming out, so we have.
And if you could reach out to us and just let us know what happens with that conference call, I'd appreciate it.
Because we assumed the due diligence would be done before today's meeting, we would have some resolution, and now, again, we're pushed back another 2 weeks now.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can, yeah.
Okay, that's probably really hard for next meeting.
All right, what do we have next? Is that it for you?
That's it for me.
What about drainage permit summary? What's this about?